in August 2019. Yeah, in August 2019, I visited China, Turkestan, what the Chinese call Xinjiang, and I had the chance to visit Xinjiang and two vocational training centers that the Chinese call, otherwise what we know here in the West as concentration camps. Here is the group of us. We visited the Wenzhou County Vocational Training Center. This center was something probably like 100 kilometers far from the city of Aksu in the middle of the desert. And now, my visit in Xinjiang started like this. I had heard a lot about what China was doing with its Uyghur Muslims. And for this reason, in July 2019, I approached the Chinese embassy in Tirana, Albania, and I told them that I'm a historian and a journalist who wanted, in a way, to investigate what is going on in China with its Uyghur Muslims. I presented my resume to the Chinese embassy. I had a meeting with them, and they told me, okay, we have one program coming for journalists from One Road and One Belt countries, and they told me if I am interested to join. I told them yes, and I was invited to Xinjiang from 16 to 25 of August 2019. This is a picture of me in the airport of Kashgar. As you can see from the picture here, you have the Secretary General of the Communist Party of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, and you have Uyghurs who meet him and are very happy. From this poster, you can understand the propaganda that the Chinese authorities are trying to do in Xinjiang, and especially to us as foreign journalists, in order to convince us and the locals that the Communist Party of China loves very much the Uyghurs and takes care about them. Now, our visit in Xinjiang, we were a group of 20 journalists. So we arrived in Urumqi on August 15th. And from the 16th to 17th to 18th, we stayed at a 5-star hotel in Urumqi, where Communist Party officials and historians presented us the history of the region, the problem that China had with terrorism, and what China was doing to fight terrorism. We received lectures from Mr. Shu Zhijian, I don't know his surname. He has appeared even on the BBC, as he was the chief of the propaganda department, or information office, as they call it, of Xinjiang. We had people like Mr. Ma Pinyan and other communist historians who presented to us as foreign journalists the history of Xinjiang and what the Chinese government thought about the present situation. During the seminar Xinjiang is threatened by terrorism. And they showed us a number of terrorist attacks that have happened in Xinjiang, Turkestan. And among others, they showed us different slides, where, as you can see from this one, the Islamic Party of Turkestan, which is a terrorist organization that fought in Syria, was put in the same place with Dalai Lama, Rabia Kader, and Doiko Isa. So for our Chinese friends, Dalai Lama was also an Islamic terrorist. Now, during the lectures that we received, our Chinese friends, they presented us with a version of history that for people like me who come from the Balkans, it resounded very familiar. During the wars in ex-Yugoslavia, the regime of Slobodan Milosevic, the Serbian historiography, was depicting the Bosnians and the Kosovars as Islamized Slavs who should return back to Orthodox Christianity and who were forcefully converted into Islam by the Turks. We had the same description by the Chinese professors who lectured us on the history of Xinjiang. They depicted, first of all, Xinjiang as being eternally Han Chinese. They depicted the Uyghurs as being immigrants who have come lately to Xinjiang. And moreover, the lectures that we had, the government white papers that the Chinese communist officials delivered to us, had an imperial narrative to the history of China. So they were telling us we had the Ming dynasty, and we had this and that. And in a way, they always were portraying Xinjiang as being eternally Chinese. And the Communist Party of China was coming into this picture as the inheritor of the ruling imperial families and kingdoms that ruled China for thousands of years. Now, I've read some things about Marx, and this shocked me because I was expecting the narrative of the history of China to be more Marxist. Now, according to Marx, proletarians have no nation. But the history that the Chinese were delivering to us was an imperialist narrative based on the history of the ruling classes. And based on this kind of view, they were perceiving Turks and Islam and the Uyghurs and other Muslim groups who live in China as foreigners, as people who had betrayed the history and the religion of the past Chinese ruling classes. And the narrative that we were given was that the Uyghurs were wrongfully and violently converted into Islam in the Middle Ages by invading Turks and Arabs. But the original religion of the Uyghurs was Buddhism. And the logic was telling that these people, the Uyghurs, they're traitors of their past Buddhist religion and culture. These people belong to the Han Chinese religion and civilization. And in a way, what we were getting from their lectures was that these people were Muslims not because they wanted to, but because the Turks had forced them to. And now the duty was for these people to revert back to their culture. This writing, I took it from the State Museum of Aksum. Because apart from the lectures, the Chinese, they were sending us to, they sent us to 3 state museums in Urumqi, Kashgar, and Aksum. And the history that they were showing to us was that it was the history of the ruling classes, Han Chinese classes from the past, the imperial dynasties. It was a history about the religious history of the Han Chinese. And when it came to Islam, as you can read from this writing that they had at Aksum, they say that Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, etc. Are the religions of Xinjiang. They coexist and blend. But they say in the 10th century, after Islam was accepted by Karahanis, which was the Turkic Muslim dynasty, they forced the implementation of Islam, and the religious war was launched for more than 40 years. Now, and what they say here, Uyghurs believing Islam is not the result of voluntary conversion and transformation, but the forced implementation by religious wars and the ruling class. So this message was delivered to us in state museums, in lectures that we had, and in the white papers. This is one of the white papers that the Chinese government has issued about Xinjiang. And in all the white papers, you read from Chinese state history and officials that Islam is not the indigenous belief of the Uyghurs, but Islam was imposed to them by the invading Turks. Now, in the museums that we visited, and in the lectures that the Chinese officials delivered to us, they were depicting the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs, the Kyrgyz, the Tatars, and other Turkic groups in a zoological presentation. These people were put into the museum. They're not people, but they were depicted as some kind of exotic beings which exist in Xinjiang. These exotic beings were depicted as primitive. For example, when we went to Kashgar State Museum, they depicted the Uyghurs as being primitive people, as people who are not clean, who have not even no toilets at home. And on the other hand, the narrative was that we, the Han Chinese, were civilized. We have come here, we are destroying their own cities, and it was the burden of the Chinese man, like the burden of the white man. It is the burden of the Chinese man to civilize these people and to turn them into modern human beings. Now, apart from the racist descriptions that they had about the Uyghurs and their conversion into Islam, they also delivered a number of lectures to us on the dangers that Islam is posing at present to China. Islam was presented as the source of terrorism. They sent us to this exhibition on major incidents of violence and terror in Xinjiang. They showed us weapons, very brutal acts of killings that have happened in Xinjiang, in order to convince us that the Uyghurs, they are suffering from the plague of And now it is the duty of us, the Han Chinese, to get rid of these people and to turn these people upright. Now, apart from the lectures that we had for around 3 days in Urumqi, because for me, being a professional historian, I objected to many of what I heard. And I told our Chinese friends, by depicting Islam as a foreign imposed religion and Uyghurs as not being natives of this region, you are doing what, let us say, Marine Le Pen does in Europe, and what other right-wingers and fascists proclaim in Europe. But you, as communists and socialists as you are, you should not have such kind of language. There is told, that we have no problem with Islam, we love the Uyghurs, we are not like Trump and Americans who they do not want Muslims, we want the Muslims. But we want the Muslims in our own way. Now, when we visited the cities of Urumqi, for example, our Chinese hosts organized state visits for us. So when we were going in the streets and highways, the highways were blocked. We were a very special delegation because they wanted us to give the best possible impression. And even when we visited the bazaar of Urumqi, they put many people to sing and dance so that we can see that people are very happy there is a fine coexistence. But when we visited the center of Urumqi, I saw this fine mosque with at the very heart. And I said, mashallah, at least I saw a mosque and I wanted to go and visit and see how people pray. What I found out, this mosque was not a mosque, but the Chinese had turned it into a shopping center. This is when I asked the Chinese hosts why you have closed this mosque, they told me it has been closed since many years ago. But they told me here in the bazaar there is another mosque which belongs to Hui Muslims, and they told me maybe you can find the thing out. When I went there, that mosque was also closed. So what I found out, that in many cities and towns that we visited, the Chinese had closed many of the mosques. Now, the Chinese authorities, they wanted to show to us that we love Islam in Xinjiang. And for this, they had built one institute called the Islamic Institute of Xinjiang. This institute was headed by Sheikh Abdul Rakib. In this institute, the Chinese had taken many, around, they told me the total number was around 300 peasants who were given scholarship by the government and were forced to learn Chinese and were also taught some surahs from the Quran. The main idea of the Chinese government was that through Sheikh Abdul Rakib, who was a member of the ruling Communist Party of Xinjiang, to produce the politically correct Muslims that the government of China wanted. These Muslims had to praise Xi Jinping, the Communist Party, and the services that at least we perceived that they offer was to open the mosques only for Friday prayers. We went to, on my insistence, when we went to Kashgar, because the Chinese hosts, they did not allow us to meet people or to interview people freely. They sent us to two mosques, but they never sent us to see people praying. So when Friday came, the day of Jummah, on my insistence and other journalists' insistence, we told them we want to go and see how these people pray. So we went to the center of the mosque of Kashgar. What we saw only old people, aged 55 and above, who we were not allowed to film. But when they came out of the mosque, I told the Chinese authorities, okay, you don't allow us to film them inside, I'm going to film them outside. They were horrified by me while I was filming them with this phone. They were covering their faces and they were very afraid of foreigners. Now, after getting 3-day lectures from our Chinese hosts, on the 4th day they sent us to the city of Axel. And on the 4th or the 5th day, they sent us at Wensi County Vocational Training Center. These are the centers that we speak so much in the West that we call concentration camps. But the Chinese call them vocational training centers. Like we have Hamburg College. So this is the Hamburg College, the Chinese version. This center that we visited was in the middle of the desert, 100 kilometers or more far from the city of Axel. If any of the so-called students wanted to escape from here, he had no chance but he would die because it is a desert. And when we went here, the Chinese, here is the moment when we enter in this center, and here is probably the headmaster of the center. When we go here, the Chinese present us with their students. As you can see, the windows are all isolated with iron bars so that people cannot escape. And when we enter here, in this hall, we go here on the left side, the Chinese present us with the students. So the students were told before what to do. They were waiting for us. And, sorry, it is not for the concentration. So as soon as they see us, they start to yell and dance and sing in order to impress us. Here is us, I mean we are journalists. I made a filming with this phone. So they were expecting us to sing and dance with these students. The program that our Chinese friends had made was supposed that we had to film and sing and dance with these kids for more than 1 hour.
Mana live broadcast qilsam bo'ladimi?
Bo'ldi endi. Bu yerda hech kim bir narsa demagan tursa.
Avval o'qiyman, chunki Uyg'ur Times chiqadi.
Yes, I'm recording too. I'm recording, but this is not live.
Well, after observing them for around 10 minutes or 15, I tell to our Chinese friends, thank you very much for hosting us. Here are the Chinese teachers of the Uyghurs. I tell them I didn't come here to see people sing and dance, but I want to interview these people because before coming here, these are the toilets of the camp that I've been. And I told them because we didn't come here to see people sing and dance. We came here to interview these people, to see who these people are, because we were told that these are radical Islamist extremists and would be suicide bombers. So I wanted to see who are these people that the brave Communist Party of China was radicalizing and turning them into positive members of the society. So here is when I took my camera with with me. I filmed some of the propaganda posters that you can see. And after this, I go outside, and outside there was a group of Uyghurs who were playing basketball. And I told to the Chinese, I want to interview these people and know who they are. The Chinese did not allow me. They got panicked. They started yelling Albania, Albania, or the Albanian, the Albanian. And I told them, okay, you don't want me to interview these people because they told me they have a physical education class and you cannot interrupt them. I told them, okay, I want to see the conditions where they live. So I entered in one of their rooms, which looks more like a prison cell. This room, which was around 20 square meters, were staying like 10 people, and as you can see, their beds are double. And I filmed even their washrooms in order, here are the washrooms, no privacy, in order to understand the conditions that these people have. After this, I told to the Chinese still that I want to interview these people. They told me, no, now we're going to present you with a class where we are teaching these people. So we entered in the class, and I questioned their Chinese teacher, who are these people? The answer was that these are extremists and radicals that have been taken and brought here to become better people. But I asked their Chinese teacher, are these people allowed to go home? He told me, yes, they can go on weekends at home, a fact which I really doubt. But I told him, what if these people do not want to come here anymore? Do they have a choice? He said no. So they are forced to go there. Because I told them, what we have in Europe and in the West, when you go to a school, you go on your will. Your mommy or daddy will pay your fees, and after school you go home. These people were not allowed to go home, they were prisoners. Now, when we entered in in their classes, I saw, and they were looking Muslim. Their names were like Qadri, Mehmet, and what have you. And I salute them in order even to see their reaction of Salam Alaikum, and they were not responding. They were looking at their Chinese teachers, waiting for a command from them. So when I tell them again Salam Alaikum, they respond Ni Hao, which means in Chinese, how are you? I told them, no, Ni Hao, Salam Alaikum, I told them. They told me Ni Hao. I had a Turkish journalist friend with me who he starts speaking Turkish to them. Tells them, I'm Bayram, I'm from Istanbul. They were not giving a single answer in Turkic language, in Uyghur, but only in Chinese, because they were not allowed to speak other than Chinese. They were forced to speak 24 hours a day Chinese, to learn the laws of China, to confess about their crimes, to learn about the great history of the Communist Party of China and other great Chinese in the history. And what I did after that, I started to interview them. And I asked people, for example, what is your name? My name is Kabri. What is your crime? Why you have ended up here? And he answered, my crime was because I prayed to God in public. Because praying to God in public, according to China's de-extremification law, is a crime. I asked other people why you are here, because I fell in love with somebody and I made nikah. Nikah is a religious marriage. That is a crime as well. Another one had put a headscarf on her head. Another one had taken part in a Quran teaching course, because learning Quran is a crime as well. Another one had told to her mother that she should pray to God. Another one had posted on internet that a true Muslim should pray to God 5 times per day. And these were the crimes. I was shocked. I even asked the Chinese teacher before getting these answers, are these people allowed to practice their religion here? They said no. But I told them, how come? This is against all the international documents that China has signed on issues of human rights. They said we respect freedom of religion in They were some of the people whom I interviewed. Their crime was that they had read on the Quran, on the internet, that they were from Turkmenistan, that they were Uyghurs, that they had a different identity from Han Chinese. So this was also a crime which sent these people to these concentration camps. Now, when I asked one of the Chinese lecturers that we had, because of course we were very shocked, we told to our Chinese hosts, what you are doing is a horrible thing. You cannot jail people only because they believe in their God. What you are doing, I told them, you are mass radicalizing these people. But when I asked one of the lecturers, how many prisoners like this you have? He told me that the number 1 million that we get from the West is exaggerated. He told me I believe that we have around 500,000 or half million. And how many such centers do you have? He told me we have 68. We were shocked to discover what they were doing, even we were Muslims. In our group, there were journalists from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, India, Turkey, Pakistan, Bangladesh. The Indians, the Bangladeshis that we spoke, the Afghans, the Turks, we were all shocked because we could not imagine that being an Uyghur or a Turkey or being a Muslim is a crime in China. The Chinese authorities were taking people from the streets and sending them to these concentration camps for the slightest sign of ethnic or religious identity that they had. When we visited these cities, we tried to speak to people that we saw on the street. People were afraid to talk to us. When we were in Kashgar, me and my friend Bayram, we met the group of the Chinese minders, and we approached one old man, and Bayram started talking to him and asking him where is the mosque of the old city, etc. He started to talk to us. As soon as he saw two Chinese coming after us, he ran away. They were afraid to speak to foreigners. There was a feeling of terror, fear, because what the Chinese were doing was that they were counting every person who was going to mosque, every person that was using his smartphone and to read something about his ethnic or religious identity. And in few words, in China, being a Muslim and being an Uyghur was declared a crime. The Chinese, this is from the State Museum of Kashgar. If you can see, they write, "Welcome to Kashi." They were not changing and scaring the hearts of the Uyghurs and other Muslims to be Sinais, but they were also changing the names, the toponymy of the country. They were bulldozing cities, like the case of Kashgar, and building new buildings. They are colonizing Dogu Turkestan, East Turkestan, with Han-Chinese colonies. And they have declared a war against the Uyghurs who want to remain Uyghur. For the people who have seen my videos, I randomly, when we went to a farm in Aksum, I interviewed one Uyghur lady. Her name was Aisha Mahmoudi, who was speaking fluently Chinese. And when I asked her, "Are you a Muslim?" she said, "I'm not a Muslim. Because for you, to keep your job in Xinjiang now, if you are not a Han Chinese, you should transform yourself into a Han Chinese, speak their language, eat their food, and you should in the Communist Party of China and in science. Many Uyghur apparatchiks that I saw who were working for the Chinese, when I questioned them, what do you believe? They told me we believe in Marx. I asked somebody, have you read Marx? He didn't read Marx. But this is what the Communist Party of China is doing with the Uyghurs. Now, from the first day of our visit, from the title of our visit to the last day, the Chinese were always presenting us this map. This is the One Road, One Belt project that the Chinese government is doing, or the so-called Silk Road. From the first day, the communist officials who lectured to us of Xinjiang, they explained to us how important is Xinjiang, which should be somewhere here, for the government of China. The government of China, who fears that one day the West and Japan and other powers can block their access to the sea, are building the plan B of their imperial domination of the markets of the world. And this is the Silk Road. They are investing and building a huge network of highways, which, as the map shows, ends up in Istanbul and in Casablanca in Morocco, where the Chinese want to build a network of roads where they will be able to sell their products. And for them, Xinjiang and the Uyghur Muslims are a very important place and people for their imperialist project. They have understood that the Uyghurs who have a different identity from them, if they want to create their own state or want to establish and to live according to their rules, they present a very great danger for China's project of the 20th century. And for this reason, they are doing this cultural genocide. They have built concentration camps where they are taking Uyghur youths, they are separating mothers from their little children, they are taking the kids of the Uyghurs from their families and forcefully turning them into Han-Chinese. They also are forcing state officials, and they told me when I was there, if you are a state official in Xinjiang, you are required that 1 month in a year you should live with Uyghurs in their family. So Uyghurs have no privacy in their families. You want to live with your wife, Communist Party will send you a communist apparatchik who is going to live and sleep with you. And they serve as indoctrinator, Chinese teachers, and spies in order to assimilate you. I have visited many countries in the world. I was in Palestine in December, but I have never seen something like what I saw in Xinjiang, where the Chinese were mass incarcerating the Uyghurs, sending them into this big brother, like Orwell's 1984 novel, schools and prisons, where they were not only imprisoning the Uyghurs, but they were brainwashing them. They were doing what Jesus says in the